in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation.
To make sure you get the most out of wealth, wine and wisdom, folks, please follow the house rules. Don't be a wallflower, get involved in the chat and enjoy this episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Happy Friday, my friends. Hope everyone is doing super well. As you're dialing in or as you're tuning in, say good day in the chat. It'd be good to know where you're watching from as we start to get into another episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Today, we've got Daniel McPherson from Positive Tax and Me Accountants, who is going to be taking the place of Mr. Witten, who we'll call it sabbatical. Is on sabbatical at the moment, and Sammy Saggers, who is just on holiday, really, at the moment. So Dan's going to be joining in and has got a fair bit to talk about today, which will be very, very interesting from an accounting perspective. But before we jump into that, for those of you who may be new, maybe have fallen across this stream and are thinking, where have I landed? What's going on? We'll give you the 30-second elevator pitch of what Wealth, Wine and Wisdom is all about. Wealth, Wine and Wisdom is all about providing clarity and financial certainty around policy, maybe having a little bit of a chat about what the politicians are up to, but ultimately trying to provide a true north, a true compass for business owners and investors out there in the world and, specifically Australia, of course. It started off in COVID when Jason and I went live every Friday dissecting the rules, the changing landscapes, the ever-changing landscapes of what was going on out there. G'day, AC. Good to see you. And trying to make sure that you're fully informed of what's really going on, not just what we call clickbait journalism, which seems to be prolific these days. Everyone's trying to capture your attention rather than actually give you some reasonable information. Wealth, Wine and Wisdom's foundation is providing the facts behind what's really going on for you, for your children, maybe so we can make more informed decisions and hopefully keep more of what you make. So rules of engagement, team, jump in, have a little bit of a chat with us, drop some comments in. We'll always go back in and say good day to everybody as we finish off the call, but it's always good to interact. So good to see you, Donna. Welcome. Happy Friday. Deanne, happy Friday, mate. Thank you very much. 2 glasses of wine there. I'm not sure. I saw Dan had a water before, so it might be a Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. No, it's not the dry version. It is the wet version. Sonia, good to see you. Welcome. Well, Dan, cheers. Welcome.
Cheers.
Good to see you. As we said earlier, I'm coming in to this episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom from amazing Noosa. We've spent the last 5 days up here with business owners. We call it the 0.4% Club. The reason why we call it the 0.4% Club is that less than 0.4% of business owners in Australia and in the US actually get over $10 million in revenue. And we're here celebrating some of those amazing people. One of them's actually dialing in right now, probably from the pool. Lindsay, good to see you. So we get around and talk about all things business, planning, tax, and try and figure out what's the best way of navigating it to keep more of what we make. So that's me, mate. That's the reason why it's super cash today and the reason for the beautiful background. And hopefully the sun doesn't do too much damage to us. But, mates, welcome. I think first time on Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, is it?
Yeah, it is. First time. Big shoes to fill.
Mate, it's not really. They're just Wittens. He doesn't usually wear shoes. They're just thongs anyway, mate. And judging by what you've already sent through, mate, I reckon we're in for a ripper. So, mate, if you want to do a high-level intro, perhaps, or we can just jump straight into it, you let me know. I'll bring up some of the content that you've shot across to us, and we'll have a little bit of a look at what's in the news. We call it at Wealth, Wine and Wisdom decanting the week. So we'll come to you just after this. So, Dan, what have you been noticing that's been happening in the headlines around your world at the moment?
Yeah, so this week, I guess there's been a little bit happening. Interesting, I guess the banks have been putting out some of their profit figures lately as well. So record profits, and CBA and ANZ looking to slash jobs, close branches. But it looks like this week they got busted by Fair Work on advertising the same role that they made redundant here in Australia and in India.
So this is an interesting one, right? Because they're cutting jobs based on artificial intelligence taking them over, aren't they?
Apparently, that's the claim anyway. I guess that's the that's one take on why an Australian job should be redundant, but they actually need a real person in India.
Yeah, right. So what's the background to this?
So I guess it's really just another way of them trying to increase the bottom line. And obviously, when we're seeing branches close, the service levels, I don't know if anyone's had to talk to the bank lately, but it's horrific to get anything done. I know we had to change a couple of signatories on one of our business accounts the other day, and had to make the appointment to go in. Honestly, it's like a 3-second job, but it takes like an hour to get done. So it's just really, I think, all about the bottom line and where they can save cost.
So effectively, they're making Australian jobs redundant because they don't want to pay the wages because they're getting higher and higher and higher, just generally pushed forward through, what's been happening in Australia. It's the cost of living crisis, as they talk about. But ultimately, they're not really making them redundant. They're actually just replacing them with cheaper labour offshore over in India.
And that's what it would appear, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it seems to be what's happening. I mean, there's always certain things that I guess that AI probably won't be able to do. And I don't know if anyone, if they've gone for lending recently, knows how long it takes. And most of those assessments are being done overseas now anyway. So there's no sort of discretion or using a bit of common sense now. It's just whether they fit their nice little tiny little box that they've got to tick off, rather than sort of, I guess, helping their customers.
Well, it's a reality of business. Like you and I both have team members offshore as well, because we need to be able to access economy of scale, because it's just too expensive to employ certain people in Australia to do certain jobs. We call them, the $1-2 jobs. You don't have somebody, getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars or $100,000 doing, dollar jobs. You have them doing $50, $100 jobs. So there's an economy of scale that works here. But for those of you who don't understand redundancy is you're really only in the world of larger businesses. You're really only allowed to make a role redundant when there's no more need for that role. So what Dan's talking about here and what the headline's all about is that there are certain redundancy requirements which say, well, that job's no longer needed. We don't need any more salespeople. We've got too many. But the fact that they're actually going offshore and advertising the same positions that they're making redundant would appear that they still need the roles and they're making them redundant in Australia. But ultimately they still need them, and that's what they're getting dragged over the coals for on this one. It's interesting, Dan, because I'll find what we spoke about last week and maybe a little bit of a soapbox. I'm not sure if you were watching, but we were talking about Westpac, and they were axing 200 of the bank tellers. And, I'm not sure if I waxed lyrical on it last week, but ultimately the bank's fundamental reason for existence initially was actually to take your money, store it, so that somebody couldn't come along and put a knife to your throat and take the money from underneath your mattress. That was fundamentally the reason they originally existed. And then there was transactional costs, so you put it in one and you could get it out in a different country. And then obviously lending came later. But, these institutions had bars on the outside, had vaults and things like that to store your money, to protect it from people who were ultimately going to steal your money. Now, it seems that not only are they reducing the amount of people in Australia serving Australians, they're reducing the number of staff that face Australians, and they're pushing you to use their online platforms, which every time you sign into those platforms, you're actually signing terms and conditions that waive your safety of your currency away. Ultimately, it means that if a cybersecurity breach happens, then you are not 100% protected on your funds like you were in the old days. If somebody came in and stole your money, the bank underwrote that. Nowadays, people can come in and they can take your money out, and ultimately, when it's gone, it's gone. So the fundamental purpose that banks exist or existed don't actually serve the same purpose anymore.
Yeah, I actually did catch that. And I was thinking too, when you look at it, now that we've really gone cashless, the banks are just raking in. Because if you're thinking like, if I've got $100 note that I would just pass around to different businesses, it'd kind of go around. And at the end, you've still got the $100 note. But now they're taking 1.5 to almost 2% off every transaction. That $100 note's gone after about 50, 60 transactions completely.
100%. And what are they actually doing for that transaction? Nothing. It's a service tax. Tell you what,
Exactly.
here's one for the government. If you want more in taxes, just take over the transactional charges and call it a consumer tax. At least then, well, actually, I prefer the banks to have it, to be fair, than the governments, because the governments will fucking just. It's good to have solid banks in Australia, but not good to have drunken sailors spending our taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
What else have you got in here, Dan?
Yeah, and like I guess where you've got Westpac cutting jobs, CBA cutting jobs, ANZ cutting jobs, like they're all cutting. So I think it only means that service is going to be even worse. So I guess it's not going to be pretty. Hopefully, we get a few more competitors in, and actually forces them to provide some sort of service. But I guess on a different topic, we've got there too. I think on the next one down, Andy.
Actually, just before we go into that one, because I think I've mentioned I had 100K stolen from our account with one of the big four banks, and never banks waived their liability to it, and so that money was never recovered. That was money that disappeared into the cybersecurity world. Pretty poor freaking experience on my side of the equation.
I bet.
Now, what had happened is 2 years beforehand, we had tried to remove signatories off certain accounts, but it was so difficult to go in and actually do it. We had to go and speak to a bank manager. Then that manager had to organize an appointment, and then that person couldn't fulfill on their obligations, didn't know how to do it. And as a result, that signatory was never removed because the friction was just way too significant. So now we're getting forced into a system whereby not only can we not do it online, there's less people to help us do that in person. So the chances of us being able to actually change the bank accounts, do the things that we need to do in order to protect ourselves are diminishing by the day. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and then like similar to that as well, we've had a few clients lately that for whatever reason have had their tax file number compromised and their MyGov compromised. So someone's gone in and lodged like amended returns and amended BAS statements and siphoned the money off elsewhere. And the ATO basically come back and said, oh, you need to prove that it was fraud. Otherwise, it's your bill.
Wow. So is this where people are hacking into the MyGov sites and redirecting? Because I've heard of this. People have been hacking into the MyGov sites and changing the destination bank accounts to the tax return.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. And then they're just going into MyGov, whether if it's an individual, they might do an amended return or do the return if someone hasn't done it for the year. Or if it's a business, go in and amend a heap of BASs to get either like the GST refunded back kind of thing. And then sort of instantaneously that the ATO are normally pretty quick on those type of things, getting the refunds through. And before you know it, it's gone offshore and it ain't coming back.
Wow. So they're hacking into a government-run application, being MyGov.
Yep.
And having money stolen from another government institution that's returning tax that has been overpaid, because a tax return is actually when you've overpaid tax effectively based on where you are. So a government-run application and a government-run refund of money that you've overpaid. And then if you go, well, hang on, the security's not there and it's gone somewhere else, then they're asking you to prove that it's gone to a different bank account.
Yeah, they're basically asking you to prove that it wasn't you, yeah.
Wouldn't you just be by the fact that there was a login in some other part of the world into your MyGov account and your bank account changed?
You would think that would be enough.
What staggers my imagination though, Dan, is like it's so fucking hard to open a bank account these days, and it's so difficult. But then when somebody steals your money, it goes from your bank account to another Australian bank account, and then bounces around potentially a couple of Australian bank accounts before it goes into the world of crypto and disappears. At what point in time are the banks going to be accountable for the fact that there's fraudulently opened bank accounts? Because surely it's not like, oh, Andy Fenton's bank account and I've just gone, oh, it's filtered through mine into a crypto account. I'm sorry, I don't have it. Surely these people must be ghosts. So there must be thousands of ghost bank accounts that have been set up completely illegally. And the banks must be at fault in properly checking, because, geez, I mean, the amount of rigmarole you have to go through to set up a bank account is absolutely obscene.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you caught, must have been a couple of months ago now on ABC did like a Four Corners on the $2 billion that the ATO lost to the GST scams, where people would just register an ABN and then put through a heap of refunds for GST and paid no questions asked.
And then dust it. And then they... Do you know how much of that money they actually got back?
I think they got a bit. I'm not sure of the exact number. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I know there was a lot gone.
Right. All care, no responsibility, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, it's not our money anyway, so we'll just try and cover it up and pretend like it never happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's happening in Queensland?
Yeah, so this came out, I think it was a little while ago, earlier in the month, about that, particularly in union building sites, the actual productivity is only 2.5 days a week to get things built. So I guess we're really at half capacity to what we should be. So I can't imagine that anyone who's got, whether it's off the plan apartments or some of these infrastructure developments that are going up and they're on union sites are going to be well overdue on timelines.
Wow. So this is saying specifically union sites.
Yes.
And specifically in Queensland, the effective productivity of the people who are working on those sites is only half. This is 2.5 days, literally
2.5 days a week. Yeah.
Holy smoke. And what was the sort of basis for, the reasons for them working less? Was it, union compliance? Because I'm not sure of the amount of stories, but I know that Jace has talked about it a lot in regards to once you get onto a union-based site, then all of a sudden costs blow out and it becomes cost prohibitive to be able to, produce apartments at a reasonable fee or a reasonable investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard some horror stories too, and even if like a tenth of that's true, it's pretty disturbing. But yeah, it's really just like delays in sort of whether it be compliance, work conditions, and sometimes you would think that when they're arguing about different sort of work conditions, like, I mean, if the tag on the microwave in the lunchroom isn't tagged properly, surely the whole site doesn't have to shut down and things like that. Yeah, so I guess they're kind of just being almost held over a barrel a little bit on these sites.
100%, it's extortion, absolute extortion. As soon as, and once you're in on these big sites, there's no going backwards, is there? Because you're looking at $100 million builds and above, and the things need to get built, so they bend you over. I remember back when the MCC, the cricket ground got the Great Southern Stand put up, and literally they had, I think, about 3 or 4 months on the job, and then all of a sudden, massive union, stand down, everybody stopped work, held them over a barrel, and basically got a 20% pay increase on all of them. Just otherwise, they weren't going to finish the job.
Yeah.
So corruption is alive and well. Well, we already know it, don't we? So are they actually doing anything about it, Dan? Or
I've not seen any response to this in the recent couple of weeks, but surely there has to be.
Well, you'd think so, because they had a productivity commission, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And it's found that we're just getting less and less productive. So surely something's got to turn at some point in time.
Maybe they should be called the anti-productivity commissions, because it seems like every single time they have a productivity commission looking into the lack of productivity in the Australian economy, we end up less productive as a result of it.
Correct. Exactly.
More taxes, Dan. That's what I reckon we should be doing. We should bring in more taxes so that we can get more politicians looking at this, so that we can really understand where all of the money's going. I think that's, I think that may be the next play for them.
Has more politicians ever fixed anything?
Yeah. Oh, mate, need more politicians in order to look at it more effectively. Well, now public sector have now taken over as the largest spender. I think it is in the Australian economy. They're the largest employer, certainly now in the Australian economy, and public sector related is the dominant industry now in Australia, which is insane. Where we've got incredible mining resources, but the government is becoming the largest employer, which is just outrageous.
Which kind of really, I guess, it skews all of the job creation figures too that they, I guess, are putting out there, because most of those new jobs are either sort of government jobs or non-market jobs, which I guess aren't really productive, and most of the time they're funded via government funds anyway. So when you're looking at, I guess, the true private market increase in jobs, it doesn't look great.
Well, we don't call them government funds at Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. We call it our money. They're building it with our money.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Absolutely.
This was an interesting headline, which caught my eye a little while ago as well. So what's the background to this?
I think it's a bit of tongue-in-cheek. I guess I'm not necessarily sure that there's too many brickies on 500K, but I still know a lot of whether it be sparkies or plumbers that are sort of edging up there pretty close too. So I can imagine there's sort of a few head people of some organisations that are sort of thinking, why are they earning so much and my income hasn't gone up as much? But I guess it really just comes back to showing how much the supply of trades is really, I guess, having an impact on prices, whether that be sort of building. I know the other day we had a water pipe burst in the roof, and lucky I was home to turn the water off, did a little patch up, and
Dan the plumber.
Well, the old man was a manual arts teacher, so I've got some skills in that regard. But you could call the plumber around, and he quoted me I think it was $1,000 just to fix like a 5-minute job for a pipe, and I was like, I'll pay you a little quote fee and see you later. So I managed to negotiate that down, but because there's no one to come and do it, they can kind of charge what they like.
Yeah, I was having a chat with one of my mates just recently, and he's got a friend of his who's a plumber, and there was something similar that went on at his house. Maybe it was even you. And he said, I don't get out of bed for less than $1,000. I said, so ring somebody else. I'm not going to come around and help you out at your house. Yeah. This was a mate.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, you wouldn't do it for a slab?
Seems to be the starting price for them.
Yeah, well, I remember, and look, not picking on trades here, but because there's lots of areas where this price inequality has happened. But it used to be that the concreters, the tradies used to ping around town in the 4-cylinder old white utes. Do you remember them? The old Ford white ute cylinders. Now they're all rocking around in $150,000 utes, $200,000 utes. Now, whatever your opinion on that is, the reality behind that is, if the people doing the manual labour behind the jobs are on very, very high salaries, then the cost of whatever you're going to be delivering on is going to be very, very high. And one of the reasons why in places like America, and one of the big challenges that we've got over in Australia is that we don't have a cheap source of labour to Australia. So America, has Mexico as a very, very cheap source of labour. Australia doesn't have that. We don't have a border that people, come across that, there's a big pricing disparity, which effectively means that, we need to rely on the appropriate amount of immigration and closely evaluated immigration to be able to supply the needs of Australia. Same thing as what happened over in the UK, I think it was about 5 to 10 years ago. Massive nurse shortage, massive nurse shortage all around the UK, and they were making it very, very attractive at giving much more lenient terms on visas and things like that to any nurse from anywhere around the world. And of course, they ended up getting them. But they were actively sort of recruiting for the right people to migrate to their country to fix an issue that their country had. Unfortunately, when it comes to migration out here, we don't seem to have our finger on the pulse of migration in any way, shape, or form. It's like migration is a necessity to Australia, but it's not like we're getting the right types of people into the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I thought there was maybe something.
Yeah, there was something on that they put out some figures that over the last 700,000 of people that came in, only 5,000 of them had any construction experience or qualifications. So I mean that's not helping towards the construction issue. We're just going to let more people in that need more houses and places to be built, but not actually bring anyone in that can do it.
Yep, 100%. We've got the Dons in here. Lack of investment in tradies by governments led to a shortage in tradies, supply demand. Look, the Dons, partly. Like one way that you can manage and price control trades or any occupation is through the appropriate education channels. So providing a way that, and maybe subsidies, but providing the right channels for people to be able to achieve the qualifications. You can incentivize that in Australia. It can also be challenging because we all are living in Australia and used to living in Australia. So there's a certain quality of life that we're kind of used to and almost like the handout generation. So we have an expectation that the price starts here. The other side is that we can get people into the country who have those skill sets. So, but sounds like, Dan, we're doing a shithouse job of doing that on all levels.
Yeah, based on the figures, it would appear that way. Absolutely.
Right, now this was something that I had a look at as well. I saw it in the Fin Review. And they do this every year. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but effectively it's the biggest taxpayers and the biggest listed companies that paid no tax. So walk us through what you've learned here.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be a pretty common theme, like year to year, on who are the bigger taxpayers. And I guess they're kind of the ones that you would normally expect to, like being the Rio number one this year behind BHP, but I guess the big miners there, particularly sort of like the iron ore and the minerals, the banks as well. I mean, maybe we need to be able to knock them down the list with us keeping more of our money and them not having as much. So really mining and banks really, I guess, where the majority of our big taxpayers are, which I guess hasn't really changed in the last couple of years.
Still seems pretty shy on it for some of those sorts of things. There must be some pretty substantial government subsidies and depreciation that's working its way into some of these numbers, because 6 billion on 22 taxable, 6, 12, 18. So that's still $4 to $5 billion worth of deductibles that have been sitting in Rio Tinto, around about the same, but a little bit more. It'd actually be closer to 5-6 billion that's sitting with BHP. This is a big one that seems to be kind of out of whack here. You've got, it's 4 billion, so 4, 8, 12. So it seems like they're sort of paying their fair share. This next one, though, is very telling, which is our biggest company taxpayers and those who didn't pay. So the top 10 companies, as far as income earners, who didn't pay a cent of income tax. So what have we got here?
Yeah, so I mean, interesting that there's a lot of gas companies in there. I know with how we tax them here in Australia is very different to, I guess, how other countries do, particularly, I guess, when you're looking at, I think it's Norway, Qatar, some of the other, like the biggest exporters, and we're the biggest exporter as well. So, I mean, it almost begs the question, why are we not really getting any income tax here when all these other countries are making an absolute fortune out of their gas exports? And then the other one too, I guess at the very top there, JBS. I'm not sure if everyone would know what they do, but they're basically the biggest meat company in the world by a significant margin. Basically, if you have any meat or see almost pretty much the majority of the meat brands are in the in Coles and Woolies, they pretty much own all those brands.
Now, could that be a factor of good and bad years and the agribusiness averaging? I don't actually know. Does a listed company, are they able to achieve the same types of averaging that smaller businesses
Yeah,
achieve?
so I mean, from the mining side, I guess Australia, we kind of give them a lot more tax breaks early, like for their investment. So basically, let them depreciate at a higher rate than what a lot of other countries do. So we kind of not seeing much tax take initially when things are being invested into. So that's kind of one reason. I mean, they're like legitimately some of these businesses might have like an actual loss, or even from a prior year that they've carried forward. So there can be like legitimate reasons why they maybe aren't paying tax. But I mean, when you're looking at some of this turnover, it's a lot, and to be not making any profit on it seems seems a bit strange. And I know JBS, they have a fair bit of controversy around them around the world about not paying any tax anywhere, and all their profits seem to get siphoned off into their corporate holding in Luxembourg that no one apparently works for.
Well, and this is actually an interesting thing, Dan. I've been doing some work with Witten, and we've gone overseas, done some study on this sort of stuff, and we were looking at the various different types of tax havens and tax treatments of different types of company and personal taxes, both domestic and internationally, and I sort of knew a bit about this before, but they put it into, I guess, quite an elegant way of thinking about it, is that you've got tax havens that everybody's kind of familiar with, but nobody really knows how they operate, like the British Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, Panama used to be, not anymore. And so the idea that these tax havens exist, and a tax haven effectively, for those who are not familiar, is a place that there's zero tax or close to zero tax payable, and they don't share information of what happens in that country with anybody. It's like there's a information curtain. Now, if that information's leaked out, like it did in the Panama Papers, where the information of what trading activities were actually happening, or what cash activities were actually happening in Panama came out, then a lot of people were sued or went to jail or were given extraordinarily large tax bills. So it's not that they're legal, it's just that they don't share the information. But then there's these ones called remittance-based systems, and there was one we spoke about more recently, a good example of a remittance-based system whereby the UK had special remittance-based system with the United Arab Emirates, and so the sheiks, who effectively might have $100 billion profits over in the United Arab Emirates, they weren't paying tax on that money. They only paid tax on the money that they brought into the UK. So if they brought $100 million in per annum into the UK, they got taxed on those dollars, but they didn't get taxed on the $100 billion that the company actually made. And apparently the UK are actually trying to remove this, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are actually fleeing out, because there's no way in hell a sheik's going to go from paying $100 million or taxable income of $100 million to $100 billion just because the government said that they want a little bit more of the money. Just not going to happen. And the other system, which is, I think it's called territorial or terrestrial. I can't quite remember the name of it right now. But ultimately, it's only going to tax money that's earned in that place. And so some of these companies can actually have, like, and it's very common in Ireland, which is one of these, whereby they have their main trading operations, administration over in Ireland, much lower tax rates, and all the money that's earned over there is then taxed over in Ireland, and they charge their offshore subsidiaries significant amounts of money in order to be able to manage the operations of the international entities, aka JBS Meat Holdings may well have significant companies. I don't know. I absolutely have no idea. But the way that some of these companies can work is that they have their main operations in these countries which we have double taxation agreements with, but ultimately the rules are that they get taxed on the earnings that they have in those countries, and they're allowed to charge the subsidiary companies around the world significant amounts of money, which can then turn them into zero tax paying entities or close to no tax paying entities. And I think there's quite a few of them operating in Australia. A lot of the tech companies are doing that, and that's why they get a lot of Australian dollars, but we never see a cent of it in tax.
Yeah, I think most people don't I guess, understand that that's the case, where that parent company in one of those tax havens is actually charging that company in Australia for things like services, licenses, basically whatever they can come up with to charge to reduce the profit here, they'll charge it and they essentially shift the profit to another jurisdiction. You'll see that a lot with like Facebook, Google. Like, they actually make no profit here in Australia; it's all overseas.
100%. And look, this is the problem with the system is, and where the government keeps saying, look, we're going to tax large companies more and more and more. Well, large companies end up going, well, fuck you. Like, why would I bother paying you more money where I can have the entity offshore and start trading most of my profits through that entity? And then the governments try and catch you by introducing new types of laws and tax regimes to try and stop that from happening. But ultimately, if you make the laws too stringent, if you make them too tough, then businesses will find a way not to pay any tax here and start to move the money offshore. Where we'd probably be a lot better off making a more favourable business environment so that businesses can thrive over in Australia, and then you'll end up with a lot more taxes by default because they can come over to Australia, pay less tax, which means that they'll be paying more tax in Australia by paying less tax in total, which means that our revenue goes up. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's exactly what countries like Dubai are doing. 9% company tax rate, mostly consumption-based tax, meaning like a GST or service charges and things of that nature. And ultimately, companies can operate at a very, very minimal company tax, and that then feeds the beast because you've got billions, if not trillions of dollars being earned in profits over there, and it's the number can be 9%, and they collect a hell of a lot more revenue than what we do.
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem that I haven't really heard any good solutions that have been put around that I guess don't get squashed by those with vested interests.
100%. And I'm a little bit reticent to say that we know how to do these things, but we did sort of come to a conclusion while learning a lot about these types of things, and that the broad conclusion was, and we've chatted about it a bit over the last few days up here with the large businesses, is if you've got 10 million worth of investment wealth, then Australia is a very good house for it. If you've got over 10 million, then maybe you start to look at different types of places to hold your investments. You can stay here and you can pay very little tax and have quite a substantial amount of business, or you can have a substantial amount of investment and pay minimal amount of tax, right, if you're structured the right way. But over and above that, you start to lose control once you've topped up your super and you use up your tax thresholds and potentially investment companies and things of that nature. So the same is true for businesses until you're starting to pay sort of 5, 10, or probably really $10 million in profit and over. The idea of potentially moving to a different country in order to minimize tax is probably a false thought, because 9% versus 25%, right? And you got to factor in, got to take into consideration what actually happens to to you when you become a non-tax resident of Australia, and the ramifications there can be quite significant on you as far as the exit taxes. So sounds sexy, but there's a lot of things that you need to go through and kind of evaluate. So broad stroke, under 10 million, you can structure yourself really well in Australia, and up to 10 to 15 million dollars worth of profit, like probably still better off doing it here. But if you're looking at outshooting that, then maybe you start to explore these types of opportunities.
Yeah. I definitely think there's opportunity too for even those under who maybe have partners overseas where you've got that ability as well, potentially. I know more and more people will have someone who, I guess, isn't an actual resident of Australia. So, yeah, interesting.
Rebecca's actually put something in the chat asking if you're able to provide advice on Australia tax and US tax and the implications and perspectives. Probably best to reach out, put some details in the social channel that you're coming in from. I think it's Facebook, Rebecca. Whack a question in there, and Dan can come back. In this type of forum, we're a little bit restricted in what we can say, but you can have a chat offline if you like. So just say like to chat with Dan, and we'll organise one of the team to reach out. Kevin's joining us in from good old Adelaide as well. What's this all about? Forget property. We bought a boring business to get wealthy. What's this all about?
Yeah, so I know you always hear Jason talking about the big generational shift in wealth, particularly from a property being handed down from one generation to the next. But people kind of forget that there's a big generation that are moving out of businesses. So, I mean, you've got all these baby boomers that have spent decades building their businesses, and they really don't have a lot of people to sell it to. So there's heaps of businesses at the moment that are kind of almost being sort of wound up for nothing, that are really profitable. They've got a lot of goodwill. They've got a lot of history. And it's kind of just like, they're just out there. So I think there's a massive opportunity, particularly for the younger people who don't want to be the influencer or the YouTuber, to do what you would consider a boring job. But geez, you can make some good money out of it.
Well, so you're seeing this personally in your practice. You're seeing businesses struggle to actually sell themselves, and they're actually generating good turnovers and things like that. But do you have any specific sort of industries, just as like to show the range or the dichotomy?
Yeah. So I mean, for example, there's a plumbing business that I looked at recently. They were making like 50, 60% net profits, turnovers of like 1.2, so they're making sort of like 500K a year profit on like a $1 million, $2 million turnover. Just sort of like similar types of, like, particularly those trades businesses that are run really well. Even things like some of the education businesses we've had sort of struggle to sell. And they had like a significant amount of material that I guess IP that they'd created that they were struggling to offload, that basically had contracts for like a whole state. And then sort of retail furniture businesses that were making really good money, couldn't sell, basically ended up winding up. Yeah, so there's a heap out there that are basically almost just closing their doors.
Yeah, it's insane. And look, if you guys are in business and you're out there, keep listening to this, or there's a QR code up the top left or just over here. If you're watching, scan that and come along to the Freedom Machine. We can talk about these sorts of things, because one of the things that we teach, and we've got a business based on that, is the exit plan. And most small businesses don't have a legacy plan, a succession plan, or an exit plan for the business. And it's a crime to see a lifetime of effort ultimately just wound up when you've got all of this goodwill, all of this profit, all of this intellectual property in the business, and you can actually sell it and potentially tax-free along the way. Like on your way out into retirement, it would be nice to whack maybe an extra $1 million without paying a single cent of tax into the bank account or into your superannuation. You can put up to 1.76 million if it's fits the small business concessions in one fell swoop. and make a massive difference. And unfortunately, yeah, Dan, we've seen it as well. Like many businesses, they just don't even know, and quite often they think that. Because maybe they've fallen out of love with their business. They think, oh, nobody would want this or nobody could do this. And the reality is there's probably lots of people who could do it and lots of people who'd want to. And then they say, well, nobody has the money to buy it. But there are ways of being able to finance or vendor finance people into these businesses and ultimately, get a payday on something that you've built over time.
Yeah.
So if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, then definitely come along to the Freedom Machine and have a little bit of a chat. And, we are assisting clients buy and sell businesses all the time and trying to make it as tax-free as humanly possible. So learn a few of the rules of the game, come along to the Freedom Machine and check out a little bit of what we've got to say. But please don't wind up your business and just throw it away after a lifetime when it's a potential gold mine for somebody else.
I know, it's a bit sad.
It is. We've seen it all too often. And the clients don't like it either, because the clients are like, well, where do I get my XYZ from? The one thing that I do know about the education sector, though, is bloody hell, like anything that the government stick their noses into, they just create so much red tape. There's a client of ours that we were trying to help restructure their business, and anytime the holding of an RTO adjusts by more than, I think, 10%, it triggers an audit, a full audit, and apparently that's like a very nasty proctological exam before they're allowed. And even if they're selling it effectively from their own name into their own trust, so the beneficial owner doesn't change, but the red tape that they have to jump through in order to be able to do it is off the charts. And had another client of ours actually try and sell their RTO, and it's just been one of the most horrifically painful experiences because of that same government red tape. Now, not saying I know that I've just said you should sell a business, but the RTOs are a very special breed that are it's a very challenging sector when it comes to passing on a business, because the government are so actively involved in making it almost impossible to do so.
Yeah. I mean, it's from the other side of things of buying, though. Geez, it's exciting if you're looking to get in, because there's so much opportunity. And even like a lot of people now, if you don't have the money, they'll vendor finance you in, so you actually don't even need any cash to put down. It's almost just start getting in there, getting your hands dirty, and doing the work. And at the end of it, you could have a really good business that then, I guess, pays for all your investments.
100%. And look, this is what people don't understand. So I'll give you an example of somebody that we helped. It wasn't a client of ours, but just gave them some advice. G'day, Joe. Good to see you. Gave them some advice because they were effectively getting to the end of their working life and made some good coin along the way, and ultimately just sort of winding down. And same thing, they were like, well, none of our team have the cash to buy the business. And so we said, well, what happens if you were able to vendor finance them, which means that effectively they don't have to put any money up front? And we structured a way whereby there were certain KPIs that needed to be hit within the business, but ultimately the business hands it over to the new partner. In lieu of receiving a wage, they received capital on that, which was tax-free. So effectively, if they were generating $500,000 profit, as you said before, might be $200,000 a year goes to pay down $1 million loan. So in 5 years, the loan's fully paid off. The new person owns the business and only made $250,000 a year for 5 years, and then now is earning $500,000, if not more, because they've scaled the business. And it's a longer strategy and it takes a little bit more forethought or foresight, but ultimately it's a hell of a lot better than just saying goodbye to the business and having nothing for it. Absolutely. Mate, I think we need to set up some sort of broking channel for it. Business brokers seem to be shitting the bed left, right and centre.
We could pool some funds in to buy some of these great little businesses too.
Mate, that's it. Maybe we start a little venture capital fund to start to acquire these. Well, mate, here's some things that were over my neck of the woods. We're sort of getting to the end of it. I've got about 10 minutes left, but I'll fire off some things that I was looking at and maybe of interest for some of the viewers out there. The US economy actually grew faster than expected through Q2 2025. So good numbers. up almost 5%. A large part of it, though, is how to lie with statistics, which is ultimately the decrease in imports, which artificially increased the relative trade balance, which means that GDP growth looked more positive because they had less imports that were coming in to offset them against, largely driven by tariffs and the scaring of tariffs, really, not the actual tariffs. I actually wanted to get a slide, but I couldn't find it for today. But the proposed effect of tariffs from the Trump effect was meant to be something like 38, almost 40%, Dan, and it's landed at less than 10%. So all of this media hype and things which manipulated markets endlessly and probably made those people potentially close enough to know what he was about to announce, and maybe if they were trading on the other side, might have made them billions of dollars. I think there was an alleged episode that that might have actually happened in one of the publications. While they're making huge amounts of money, the reality that's come to pass is that the actual tariffs are far leaner than they were expected to be in the first place. So positive growth in the US, largely manipulated by the lack of imports, but still it's a positive story for them. But much more is needed from the US side of the equation just to cover their own expenses. This was an interesting one just out from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, as I'm being eaten alive by mosquitoes over here. So if you see me wobbling around, Dan, it's because
you've been eaten to death.
I am. But so in a housing crisis, Dan, you would expect the number of approvals for housing dwellings to increase, wouldn't you? Like that
you would think so. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
It would make sense to me. But the drop in total dwellings, I'll read the headline. The drop in total dwellings was driven by an 8.1% fall in private dwellings, including houses, from the ABS. So apartment drive fall in dwellings approval. Total number of dwellings approved fell by 6% in August to 14,744, which is a minuscule fraction of what is needed. So people don't look at property investors as the bad people. Don't look at anything else. Look at these incompetent buffoons that are not allowing things to go through. We still have councils and things like that are just stopping the progress of apartments and dwellings in Australia. Like, these statistics are disgusting. Like, they're so underwhelming, and they should be going up. If you want to decrease the prices of property, make more of them available, and increase the supply. So that'll, all other things being equal, will help stabilize or reduce the cost of property.
So that's approval. So if we join the dots there with only 2.5 days week productivity, longer build times, and then also less workers coming in, it's not looking like a good picture, is it?
Fuck all people. Fuck all apart. It's that's effectively the government's approach to it. So let's do fuck all. That's how we're going to fix it. We're not. We all need something to focus on. So no solutions there, but there's opportunities there if you're on the right side of the trade. You just need to think about what that means, and we certainly know what that means. It's going to certainly put a lot of pressure on housing prices, pressure that is upward pressure. It's going to put pressure on them not coming down. This was an interesting one. This goes to some of yours. It's a bit morbid. Increase in death reflects aging population. So people are dying, Dan, and they're dying. Well, let's put it bluntly. More people are dying than they've ever died before, even through COVID. Let's not even go through the fact that the flu still has a greater mortality statistic than COVID-19, but we won't talk about that because that'll just give all of us Victorians an absolute PTSD episode. But increase in deaths. So the number of deaths registered in 2024 grew up to 187,268, which is up 4,000 or 2.3% from previous years. Now, I'm not saying that to be morbid. It's just a reality of life. We will all get there at some point in time. maybe Elon Musk won't. He'll probably live forever. He'll probably be cryogenically frozen or on a spaceship hurtling around the universe across the event horizon. But we're going to start to see that what you were talking about is the people passing on their businesses, but also passing on the wealth transfer. So that's going to start floating through. And as it does, taxes, financial advice, all of these things are going to be needed in order to be able to do it in a way that minimizes the economic effect on the families, minimizes the amount that the governments get, maximizes the amount of wealth that the families get. And then hopefully we have the inheritance being utilized productively. But all points at the moment, Dan, that this huge wealth transfer will go largely into cleaning up debts. And if the government have anything to do with it, they'll introduce some more death taxes, and you won't even be paying off your kids' debts. You'll be paying off the government's debts as you die. Another reason to go to another country. No, just joking. So inflation figures are out. Inflation is stable. It's a little bit up at the moment. So I thought I'd bring this to light because this is interesting, right? There are a lot of people crying poor, and I get there's a lot of people doing it hard, but the statistics, the actual data points to some interesting things. So we have never spent more in the history of Australia. That's the reality. Total monthly spending, household spending is up, and it continues to rise. Part of it due to cost of good crisis. But then let's have a look at where that is being spent. Non-discretionary expenditure is living costs, that power, gas, utilities, those sorts of things. Not discretionary. You need these things to live. Additional services can sometimes be discretionary and non-discretionary. Let's just say that they're in the non-discretionary basket. Goods, typically, additional things. They don't necessarily have to be great shiny objects. Some people will call them necessities, and other people will call them luxuries. But then here's the thing: the discretionary spend has hit 50 billion. The discretionary spend, which effectively means we're still a nation of spenders, right? That's an extraordinarily high discretionary spend.
That's huge.
Up from what would be non-discretionary. Like even if we add services and we call that non-discretionary, meaning it's a mandatory cost like paying your mortgage, and your non-discretionary spend, so we say, well, that's 35 plus 25. Well, we're probably just a little bit over the discretionary spend if we add those two together. So 50-50. Which is very, very interesting. So people are still spending. The increase in inflation data is telling, and potentially coming into summer might mean good trading around, for those consumer cyclical businesses, for those people who rely on people to be spending. I mean, I'm here in Noosa and we're doing the same thing. So I can't say too much, but I will say those statistics, if you were to put that discretionary spend, I've just had an ABC moment. Slides have gone down. If you took that discretionary spending and you put that discretionary spending into investment spending, then it would be a very, very different landscape. So here's my tip for this week. Is maybe take some of that discretionary spending and start to look at micro investing or investing or taking some of that money that you're spending on things that would and are considered to be luxuries, start to take part of that and put that into investment for the future, because it's the energy that you expand now that produces the revenue that you receive, and how you deploy that is going to largely dictate what tomorrow looks like for you. And if you do follow the ABI approach, which is always be investing, always skimming a little bit of funds off the top, whether you're in business, whether you're a PAYG employee, it's about just taking some money off the top. Like everybody, if you take 5%, if you've never invested, take 5% above everything else that you're spending, you will figure out a way to make that work. And if you keep investing that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, then that'll turn into a very significant nest egg for you and your family one day into the future, and give you opportunities that some people take and others would like to take, but just don't get involved in the game. You have to invest, you have to take risk if you want the return, but doing it consistently over time produces extraordinary results. So team, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to do that, there's a QR code that you can come along to one of the webinars that Jason and I run called the Freedom Machine, that helps people invest, helps people understand the game of tax, the game of business, the game of putting more into your pocket, less into the government's pocket, keeping more of what you make and doing it in a way that keeps you safe and secure. But that's about it from my side. Dan, any final thoughts for this amazing Friday night?
No, I think that was a pretty good place to end. I think it comes down to the power of compounding. So the longer you leave it, you're exponentially missing out even more.
100%. I think it was Einstein who said, and I always get corrected when I quote people and whatever. The point is still valid. It was the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest. So the more that you put away, the more that you will have for the future. And ultimately, I can tell you, Dan, probably about 50 stories of people who had well over $1 million who started off with mum and dad buying them some shares in CBA, and they just reinvested it and put a few $100s in each year. Then it went to, a few thousand each year, and not major amounts, not life-changing amounts. But, after 50 years of doing that consistently and allowing the constant investment and the reinvestment to take place, they ended up with, $1 million more over and on top of their super. So simp doesn't have to be aggressive, doesn't have to be crazy, just has to be consistent. Consistently done will produce extraordinary results. Well, Dan, thanks for joining me on Friday, mate. Look forward to having you on the show again and seeing you in a couple of weeks, where we'll be chatting with our team at the Exit Plan, teaching them how to navigate these things. But for now, it's a good night from me, and it's a good night from Dan. Good night, team.
Everyone.
Happy weekend.
Thanks for watching another episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss a thing, folks.
We'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Debrief the week with Wealth, Wine and Wisdom.
Every Friday at 5 p.m. Victoria and New South Wales time. We know that Queensland, South Australia, WA have different time zones, as does Darwin, but we're sure that you can do the calculations depending on whether it's daylight savings or not.
You can also catch up on all the episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you check out the Positive Mentor podcast from our 6-star team at positivementor.com.au.